and welcome to the Connection Compass podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Louise Evans. One of the things I love about doing the podcast is I get to learn about topics that I don't really know about. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Hadeeqa Bibi, a clinical pharmacist, ADHD coaching specialist, and neurodiversity practitioner. Together, we are exploring ADHD beyond the stereotypes and talking about what it really means to understand the ADHD brain. We discuss why traditional productivity advice often falls short, how personalised strategies can make all the difference, and why compassion, curiosity and community are so important. Whether you have ADHD yourself, support someone who does, or simply want to understand neurodiversity, this conversation is packed with practical insights and powerful reminders that different doesn't mean broken. So welcome, Hadeeqa. It is so lovely that you're here on the Connection Compass podcast today. Thank you for agreeing to come and chat to us. For our listeners, please could you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me, first of all. It's lovely to be here. So I'm Hadeeqa, a clinical pharmacist, neurodiversity practitioner, and an ADHD coach. So just, I guess, a little bit about the work that I do. My work's really focused on helping people understand ADHD beyond the stereotype. So a lot of people I support have spent years feeling overwhelmed, misunderstood, or feel like they're constantly failing when actually they've never been given the right explanation or the right support as to how their brain works. So for me, providing that ADHD support is not necessarily about fixing people, but it's about helping people understand themselves, recognizing their strengths, and kind of building on the practical systems that work for their brain rather than against it.
Yeah, it sounds really empowering. It sounds really empowering for people. And so you started out, so we'll just go back a little bit because we'll talk about where you've come from. So
Yeah,
first and foremost, you've been a clinical pharmacist.
yeah,
At what point did you then start to feel like you wanted to do more and wanted to do more work in the ADHD field? What happened? What ideas,
yeah,
what thoughts, what feelings came
yeah.
for you that you wanted to go that way?
I think from a young age, I always knew I wanted to achieve something big, but not necessarily knowing what that was, I think at the time. So at the time, it was just, yes, I want to go to university and I want to do something, but it wasn't clear what I wanted to do. And actually, when I was younger, I wanted to be a lawyer. Yeah, so completely different to where I've ended up to. But I mean, I went on a school trip and that was sort of enough to put me off. Um,
Well, to like the courts or something like that.
Yeah, we went
Oh,
to the course and I just felt like it was such a long day and there was just no fun in the day. Like it just felt very mundane and I don't know, yeah, very exhausting, I guess.
yeah.
And as a student, it would be, but yeah, I just felt that environment wasn't for me. So I guess as I got older, I really did enjoy science as a subject. And at the time, I just knew I didn't want to commit to a lifelong career like medicine, and I just didn't want to do dentistry for reasons, I didn't want to look in people's mouths. So, so pharmacy was sort of like an alternative, I guess, healthcare career that had some stability, good career prospects, and I went for pharmacy. And it never felt like it was my passion or it was something that was fulfilling. I mean, I enjoyed helping people and giving something back to the healthcare system and making a difference there. So I really enjoyed doing that, but it wasn't necessarily something I saw myself doing lifelong. So I obviously never said no to any opportunities. That's the first thing, which is why I am where I am today. And I've always taken risks. So even with my pharmacy career, I achieved quite a lot earlier on in my career and worked around numerous sectors. So GP out of hours, hospital, community, locuming, vaccinations. And how I fell into neurodiversity was actually I was working at a vaccine clinic at the time and it was COVID. And I obviously came across somebody that I bumped into, and he owned a pharmacy, and he was actually providing medication to an ADHD company where they were sort of providing assessments, treatment for ADHD. And he looked at my CV and he'd, said, because at the time I'd done my postgrad clinical diploma, and he said, for the skills that you have and the experience that you have, you wouldn't want to waste it. And I have this opportunity. Do you want to take it? And I said, yeah, why not? And I guess at that point I was looking for something different anyway. And I was like, yeah, my chances here, so why not? And that's how I actually fell into neurodiversity, because then I did a bit of training, started doing ADHD assessments, medication titration, because I'd already done my prescribing course. And I really enjoyed it because it was so vast in comparison to what I thought it was. Like, I literally thought ADHD was a lack of focus at the time because my knowledge on ADHD was just so limited. And when I started working in that role, it was just so intriguing and fascinating that ADHD was not just a lack of focus. There were so many different aspects to it. And I have my brother that has ADHD and autism. And growing up, there wasn't much awareness of it. My mum didn't really have much support with him. So we've obviously had a lot of challenges with him growing up and learning through, lived experience. And a lot of things just started clicking. And I was like, oh, this is why he does this, or this is why he behaves like this or reacts like this. And when I worked in that role, I guess it wasn't just ADHD. It was all the neurodiverse conditions interacting with each other. So autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and everything just seemed to click. And then I was like applying strategies. I was trying with my clients, with my brother, and they were working really well. And through that, I actually understood him better. And our relationship got better because it was just simple things that I was doing that was different. And that's when it clicked to me that actually there's more to this than just providing a clinical service. And which is why I think I've just sort of progressed and progressed. And I think it feels like there's no end to it because there's always something new that I can fall into and pave a new path, essentially.
That's really fascinating, and I really love that it's really helped your relationship with your brother.
Yeah, definitely.
Probably helped all your family members as well, and your brother.
Yeah, definitely, because we speak about it a lot more openly. And I guess with my immediate family, there was never that stigma you do get anyway. But with my extended family, there was quite a bit of that. But
Okay.
we're now able to just have those open conversations why he has a certain reaction or why he behaves in a certain way without anybody feeling, oh, this is too much or there's always something going on. It's validating both for him and for us. Yeah.
So within your work,
Yeah.
key element is understanding how the mind works with ADHD and
Yeah.
how you can use that to then build on personal strengths for people. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So I guess everybody's obviously heard of the relationship of dopamine, a chemical, and the role that has to play within ADHD. So usually it is that somebody with ADHD doesn't have sufficient dopamine, which is why they require that constant stimulation,
Yeah.
or they easily get bored or they lose focus. So understanding the ADHD mind is very important because number one, not everybody's mind is the same. And we have to acknowledge that every individual is different. So one thing that works for one person may not work for the other person. And it's important to understand it as well because it changes the story that somebody tells about themselves. So I guess a lot of people that do have ADHD grow up being called lazy, careless, you're not working hard enough. And actually, the only difference is that the way their brain processes attention, motivation, emotions, tasks, it's just very different to how somebody without ADHD would process it. So I think it really does help reframe ADHD in the sense that it stops focusing on the deficits and rather highlights the positives. And there's positive ways in which you can use your brain to do things rather than focusing on the negatives that a lot of people do focus on. And there's also been some research behind this as well. So University of Bath did a study, and that found adults with ADHD who recognize and use their personal strengths report better well-being and improved quality of life. And they even have fewer mental health difficulties. Yeah, so I think it's very powerful for people with ADHD to understand how their brain works, and also from a practitioner perspective, it's important for me to understand how my client's brain functions or works, and what sort of reactions they have in certain situations as well.
So when you do this with your clients, is it something you observe or is it something that you speak to them about?
A bit of both. So often, so I guess with COVID happening, is we've resorted to a lot of remote consultations. So I do see a lot of my clients on Zoom or Skype. And it's when I'm doing the assessment or when I'm doing sort of like a coaching session, you're not necessarily just taking what the client is telling you, you're also observing. So I
Yeah.
get such a variation in this, where you may get like one client where they're really fidgety, can't sit still, and you can just see how it's impacting them. And then you can have someone completely the opposite, where they're present but not present because they're so distracted by things happening around them, or they're either daydreaming but trying really hard to focus. So obviously we do gather a lot of history, but then obviously visual observations are a key part of assessments and support with coaching as well.
What And in terms of practical strategies, what practical strategies would you use to support people with ADHD?
Yeah, I think there isn't just a one answer for this.
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and this was actually something I was quite surprised at when I first
Yeah.
started, working with sort of like the coaching side of things, because you just think, oh, yeah, we get them to use a list, we get them to use a calendar, we get them to use all these tools, but actually they don't work most of the times.
Right.
People
Yeah.
with ADHD, because number one, a lot of them are quite forgetful. So even if you gave them a list, say if they forgot it at home and that's sort of the end of the list, or they forget to keep checking in or remembering to add things to the calendar. So for me, the best strategies are the ones that they'll use. And I know that sounds quite broad, but yeah. So rather than, I guess, copying what works for everybody else,
Yeah.
sometimes I'll use a mixture of strategies. So say a list may work for somebody on a Sunday evening, but then that's not something they can keep up with during the whole week. So we'll create that list and then pick like the top 3 things they need to do from that list, and make sure you have them on your phone notepad, or you have them set as reminders when you'll actually follow them up. But I think the best one that has worked in a lot of people is breaking tasks into tiny steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that works really well, because often with people with ADHD, it's not that they struggle with doing things, it's not the capability. It's more the fact that they find big tasks overwhelming, or they struggle to get started. So when you break a big task into smaller steps, that's usually quite efficient, because then it feels less overwhelming, and they also feel like they've achieved something by completing one bit of it, rather than feeling inadequate.
So it sounds very individual. Being able to work with you sounds like a really unique experience, and that they get strategies that are specific to them and their needs and what works best.
Yeah, definitely. And say one strategy that works for one person may not work for the other person. So say, for example, if somebody needs to clean a room, if you just said to somebody with ADHD, just on a Sunday at 12 o'clock, clean your room, that won't necessarily work. But if you say, when you get that thought of cleaning the room, get up straight away and pick up 3 things that need to be placed wherever they belong, that works better, because they've got a smaller instruction, a more specific instruction, and it's doing something rather than nothing. And I think that's the key thing to understand as well with ADHD. As long as you're doing something and you're doing smaller steps, that's still an achievement. It's not necessarily always. It's not always about having to get on top of everything at once, or, getting through everything that everybody else has got through.
Mhm. And so, well, you've worked as a you're working as a clinical pharmacist, you've got this specialism. How have you brought a values-based approach into your work? Yeah, we'll start with that one. We'll break this question down because it is a little bit wordy. So, uh, how how do you bring a values-based approach into your work? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I think values are very important, probably in every sort of career or everything that we do. And I think it's very important that values are at the core of what we do,
Yeah.
because it's not about just doing a job or just providing a service. It has to be a service where you're offering something to your clients that they deserve and that they sort of expect from you. So even sort of with coaching, for me, it's not about just, being productive or just helping people get more done, because ultimately, I mean, they find it challenging to get things done, which is why they're seeking coaching in the first place. It's more about helping them feel understood, reducing that shame, and building a life that works for them. And for me, key values that I do demonstrate in my practice are compassion, honesty, and empowerment. And I think they're really important because it's very important to me that my client feels safe enough to say, actually, I'm struggling and I'm not perfect at this. Um, or even if we've discussed something, I'd rather them say, actually, that doesn't work for me, or I've tried this and maybe it worked for this amount of time, or maybe it worked in this situation, but it didn't work in other situations. And having those values, I think it's very important, because then your client does feel very safe with you, or whoever you're providing that service to, they
Yeah.
feel that they're heard or they're seen, or it's a safe space for them to not have to put a mask on or be somebody that they're not.
Yeah, I love that. Do you find the values working almost like a guide in a way to how you approach each person?
Yeah, definitely. Because a lot of the times I feel when people are fed up with their job, that's where the misalignment is, because
Mm.
they don't have those values to stay in that role. It's like they're just doing it because it's a job that needs doing. Whereas I guess with what I'm doing, I have quite a passion for it. And
Yeah.
I've got that lived experience from my brother, and I know how difficult it is to live through that as well. And I think the having the values at the core of what I do is very important for me, because say for example somebody's not having a great day and they feel very irritable. I've had it where I've started a coaching session and all my client has done is talk at me, or they felt so annoyed, and I always give them that golden minute to decompress and have that space to just let things out. And I think being compassionate and allowing them to feel empowered really does align with that, because you have to sometimes step back and allow them to feel what they're feeling and express how they want to express themselves. Um, and then by finding ways that work for them, it's all about empowerment, because you're making them feel more able and more confident in who they are as a person.
I know you've already talked about some of the misconceptions that people have about ADHD,
Yeah.
but is there any others that are perhaps more harmful, the biggest misconceptions about it that we want to eliminate?
I think the biggest one is that people assume that somebody that has ADHD, they don't care about things or people or how they come across, because often they care too much. And obviously, on the outside, it doesn't present in that way. So I think when they hear people say, oh, you don't care, or this doesn't matter to you, it's really hurtful. And I don't know if you've heard of something called rejection sensitivity syndrome, but that's quite a big thing with people with ADHD. And they won't just, think, oh, this is just sort of a negative remark and I'll take it with a pinch of salt. They'll really sit there and think about how that impacts them and how it's made them feel and why that person said that. What is it that they did? And I think it just creates a very unhealthy spiral for them. And they go round and round when really it could have just been addressed a little bit better rather than I guess, saying that you don't care. They can say, what is it that made you feel like this or react like this? Yeah, so I think that's probably one of the ones that has quite a negative impact.
How does ADHD coaching differ from, say, therapy or counseling?
Yeah. So therapy and counseling often focus more on emotionally healing yourself, past experiences, trauma, mental health, and processing emotions. Whereas coaching is more focused on the now and the future. So you're focusing on the present and what follows on from that. And it's more about looking at what strategies you can use, how you can, change your environment to help you, or what things you can do just to get you through situations that you're currently in, and how you can then use those tools to continue maintaining that progress in the future. So I guess it could be like helping with time management or better communication or better organization, prioritization. And sometimes I do get clients where you can see that the trauma is taking over, which limits what you can do with the coaching. And often I do say to those clients that I think it's probably more sensible that you do seek some help with counseling and therapy and process things that have happened in the past before we obviously work on the coaching side of things.
So, particularly with your experience with your brother and family, how can partners, friends, and family members better support someone with ADHD based on your experience?
I think the biggest thing is replacing the criticism.
Okay.
Yeah. So sort of replacing it either with curiosity or a bit more compassion or understanding. I guess because if you say to like a family member or somebody quite close to you, or why you just like this, why can't you just do this, or why can't you just remember this thing, it just constantly adds to the shame that they're already feeling.
Okay.
And they just feel like they're never good enough regardless of what they do.
Mm.
So sometimes just like that clear communication, being a bit more open or being a bit more supportive, it helps. And I guess if you're a family member or a partner to somebody that has ADHD, it's about recognizing the efforts as well. Because I think a lot of the times people are just constantly criticizing each other and highlighting how much of a bad job they've done, or highlighting how they've not done something as well, or they've not remembered something, or they've not done something to a standard that they expected them to. And then that's difficult because if you're sharing that space and you're sharing life together, it's very difficult because then it naturally grows that resentment between you, because they feel like, they are trying hard below the surface and they're putting a lot of effort in, but it's just never appreciated or recognized. So I think I've had a lot of clients where relationships have fallen apart for those reasons, where they just feel they're not being supported, or they just feel regardless of how hard they try, it's just never good enough.
And so, what's the one piece of advice that's commonly given to people with ADHD that just backfires?
Just do it.
Oh.
I think if you say to somebody with ADHD, just do it, it's just not, most of the times it's not going to happen, because that's just not how their brain works. They need pressure, they need, urgency, they need that excitement to do something. So I think changing that around more so to fit how their brain works much better. Or even if they can't do something, it's just about exploring, why is it that you can't do this, or why is it that it's so difficult. But I always do laugh about this because people just say, don't they, why can't you just do it, just do it. But yeah, that's one thing I would stay away from, sort of advising anybody with ADHD.
I have to say, just going off tangent now slightly, but we'll put the link in the show notes. But you do some really engaging TikTok videos, don't you, around
Yeah,
ADHD? It's really educational. You
yeah,
you learn things on there. As I mentioned before we started, this isn't a topic that is not my expertise, it's not something that I know much
Yeah.
about, but they're just really snappy, short ways of getting information on
Oh, thank you.
ADHD. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
We'll make sure we link those in the show notes. And so for somebody with ADHD, in terms of awareness and support, does community play a large part in this, in helping and supporting people?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think community is quite important in every field or every aspect of life, whether it's family life or professional life or other aspects as well. And I feel like with ADHD in particular, it's very important to have that community because it's just so powerful to meet people that are like-minded or sort of understand you without you having to over-explain yourself. And I think people just feel a bit more heard and understood when they are part of these communities because they feel like they don't have to have that mask on that they need to have with everybody else. They can just be who they are, do what they want, say what they want, and there's no judgment. So I think community is really important. And I guess they all bounce off each other as well because I'm part of some of these ADHD communities because of the nature of what I do. And it's just really lovely to see that they're so supportive of each other. And if something has worked for somebody, they'll just drop it in a group chat or say, this has worked for me. And I wonder if anybody else is struggling with this, try this. Or if somebody's feeling really overwhelmed one day, they'll just type a big long message on one of these groups and they'll just say, I just had to let somebody know about this and this is how I was feeling. And then people are very supportive. They'll say, oh, I hope things get better, or it's completely understandable that's happened to me, or this happened to me the other day with my mom, or I went through a similar situation. And it's just so nice to see that they're bouncing off each other. And I guess in a sense are validating each other, aren't they? That, what you're feeling is not invalid or it's not something abnormal or it's not something to be ashamed of. And yes, I think community is really important.
So what's next for you? What's your plans next?
I think I'm just following the path of life essentially at the moment. Yeah, I'm doing some very exciting things. Obviously, I'm expanding my coaching business as well. So, yeah, I think I'm busy at the moment. I don't know where it's heading to, but that's something exciting in itself because I don't know where I'll end up this time next year. But I know that it will definitely be the next step and definitely bigger things to come as well.
Trust in the unknown.
Just in the unknown at the moment.
And so we've had a really interesting conversation. There's so much information and detail. It's really helped me understand more. Is there anything more you want to say before we finish on the topic?
I mean, I hope I've not bombarded you with
No,
too
not
much.
at all. Not at all. No,
Yeah.
it's been really useful. Yeah. Is there any piece of advice you want to share? Or...
I think just one thing to probably add is, and I guess this isn't just with ADHD, it's just general advice. And I guess just being human and being nice to people around you makes a huge difference because you don't know what people are going through and what sort of challenges they've had throughout life. And I guess if you can be that positive person that's just maybe even said one positive thing to somebody and it's made a huge difference to them, I think that's really important. And I think just being non-judgmental about people is really important as well. And I think that's sort of advice that can apply everywhere. So allowing people to have opportunities, allowing them to flourish in the moment of life that they're in rather than judging them or putting people down. Because often we don't realize, but even a lot of my clients or patients that I see, some of them are quite held back in life because of things people around them say to them or say if that then impacts them and they're not brave enough to just step out of that, then it just does really limit the potential, even if they're capable of doing so much and achieving so much. So yeah, I think that's just one piece of advice,
Yeah, I
being
think
non-judgmental.
it's really important, a really important piece of advice. So one last question. Next question's for you. Have you got a favourite song?
You know what? I was thinking about this because I know with every podcast episode, there's always a song requirement, and I'm not the best person when it comes to songs, because I often just listen to songs whenever you're just in that mood and you've heard a song and somebody sort of introduced you to it, and then it's just on repeat. But I really like Let Them Go by Matt Hansen. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
No, I haven't. I'll listen to it.
Yeah. So I think the inspiration behind that song was to let go of something that's hurting you, even if it feels hard. And I think I wanted a song that really connected with what we were talking about. So I just thought, yeah, that was quite a good one that fit in, because a big part of my work is to help people let go of shame, unrealistic expectations, and the idea that they don't have to perform in life as everybody else does, because you're each your own person and you can live a life that you want to live. It doesn't have to be dictated by anybody else or how people expect you to live it. So I thought that one resonated really well.
Yeah, I love it.
You'd have to listen. You'll probably get addicted to it.
I will do. I'll listen after we're finished. But thank you so much for your time and your energy today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh,
Hadeeqa.
it's been lovely being on here with you. I've been really enjoyed the chat.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of The Connection Compass. For more information about Hadeeqa's work and those amazing TikTok videos, please check the show notes. If you think this episode will help someone else, please leave a review, and remember to keep talking, keep connecting for a more interconnected world.